everyone and welcome. This is Mindy Egan for lawnfawn, and in today's video, I'm creating this cozy Christmas cats scene. Now, this card is actually inspired by a lawnfawn design team member. I think it was Tammy that created a card similar to this, and it had the winter mice. I loved the scene and the colors that she used, and I'm going to tweak it and design it to make my own adaptation of that card. The way I started this project is by placing down the stamp sets that came to mind, things that I wanted to add to the scene, and how I can incorporate some of her ideas and mix them up with mine and some of the new products that Lawn Fawn just recently released. So, some of the main supplies that I'm going to be using is the Cozy Cats stamp set, Over the Mountain Borders. I'm also going to use the Christmas garland from this die set. I have the Snowflakes stencil and also the brick stencil. Then to take a look at the inks that I'm going to be using, it is kiddie pool cranberry, lobster, artichoke, cilantro, black licorice, and jet black ink, all from Lawn Fawn. I'm also going to be using the white paste with my snowflake stencil to add some texture. Now let's get started. The first thing I did was put repositionable tape on the back of my white cardstock that's cut to 4¼ by 5½, and I'm going to secure that down to my work surface. You could use a sticky mat for this. I'm going to place the brick stencil over the top and then just hold it down with a low tack tape. I don't really need a full panel for this. I'll end up trimming it down, but I figured I might as well just create the panel and I can save the extra for other projects. I'm starting with a blending brush and applying lobster ink, really kind of scattered throughout the background. You can see that some areas are darker than others. And then I'm going to bring in cranberry and do the same thing, just kind of scatter it so it gives it more of a distressed feel. I'm going to go ahead and create my background right away. So I'm doing the sky for the background. And this I only need to do about 3/4 of the panel because the brick wall is going to cover the bottom portion. I'm starting with kiddie pool at the very top, kind of heavier handed at the top, and then getting a little lighter handed as I get down towards that 3/4 mark. Off screen, I already went ahead and trimmed down my brick wall. So it's up to you how big or how tall you want it to be. And now that I have that kind of laid out, making sure everything was working with the idea that I had, I'm going to bring in the snowflake stencil. Again, I secured that down to my work surface using a repositionable tape and then holding the stencil down over the top. And I'm going to apply the white paste. I'm going to scrape this so that it's filling in all the open areas of the stencil. Now, this is a really textured stencil. And to get a nice smooth finish, I'm going to take this kind of palette tool and just smooth that across the entire background and try and make it so it doesn't have little bumps or rivets in there from my palette knife. Then once I have that done, I can scrape off any excess. I like to wipe my tools down with a baby wipe and then carefully peel back the stencil. And I'll take that over to my sink and wash the stencil off right away or put it in a bucket of hot water and let it soak. So while my panel is drying off on the side, I am going to stamp out the images that I knew for sure that I was going to use. So I have the 3 cats there from the Cozy Cats stamp set and one of the borders from the Over the Mountain border stamp set. I loved these little kittens. I thought they were adorable in their little winter gear, but they could also work for a fall card too, because it gets kind of chilly in the fall. I'm stamping them onto white cardstock. This is 80-pound white cardstock using jet black ink. You can see I did leave a lot of room down there on the bottom of that hillside, and that's because the brick wall is going to be kind of coming up to those trees. And when I'm coloring my trees, I always flip my cardstock for some reason. This is easier for me to color it like this. I'm going to be using my Copic markers today. And the colors or the markers I'm using is G28 as my darkest color, coming in then with a G07 and YG06. And really not blending them too much. I'm kind of just adding the flicks because I wanted it to have those striations in there to give it more of a textured feel to my trees. Then I want to add a little bit of color to give it the look of snow. I don't want to leave it stark white. I'm going to bring in a BG11 and then a BG10 to just soften that out. For the tree trunks, I did E25 and then just came in with a line for E29 to give it that dimensional look. And for my cats, I wanted to have some striped cats. I don't know if I've ever colored striped cats before or made them a striped cat. So I started out with C3 blend it out a little bit with C2 and then C1. And I'm going to come back in with C4 and literally just add flicks to create those stripes. I do go back sometimes and kind of widen them, maybe make it a really, really skinny type of triangle, and even adding a little bit of a darker color to some of the tails too. For each of the cats, I'm keeping the darker shade, which is the C3, on the outside edges so that the highlight is in the center. And I was really excited about how these turned out because normally I am pretty heavy handed and I go a little bit too dark with my darkest shade, but these guys stayed pretty light. I tried not to go over it too many times, and I think it gave them a really kind of snuggly feeling to them. So finishing this last cat here on the right, just doing the C3, C2, and blending out with the C1, and then coming in with those flicks or even creating those really skinny triangles to do the stripes. I went back in and I think I did an R21 and an R20 to add pink to the noses and a little bit of pink to the ears. I'm going to keep all of their outfits the same just to make it easier on myself and decided to go with more of a teal color combination. So I'm using BG57, BG53, and BG11. So ultimately, what I'm doing is just picking one side of each of those garments to add the darkest color to, and then blending out with the rest of the colors, really having it kind of fade off into that BG11 so I get a really nice light highlight. And then once everything is completely colored in, I'm going to line up the coordinating dies, hold them down with a low tack tape, and run them through the die cut machine. Now that I have those die cut, you can see why I had left so much space underneath the trees when I stamped that out. And that's because I wanted that to kind of be up higher than what my brick wall is going to be. So I trimmed that panel down. So it's going to be 4 1/4, which is the same size as my card front that has the snowflakes. And then I have the brick wall underneath. And I thought that left enough of a gap where I can still see the trees in the background, but also have my cats sitting on the brick wall. So instead of creating a cat scene with them on a brick wall or even like a fence, a nighttime scene is usually what comes to mind with the cats. I thought this was super cute to incorporate them into the winter scene on a brick wall. I'm going to add just a little bit of decoration to the brick wall, and I die cut out the Christmas garland out of white cardstock. I started out by adding the cilantro ink and then just coming in and sporadically adding the artichoke to give it a little bit of differentiation between the colors. I die cut the garland out 2 more times out of white cardstock. I'm adding them together with my liquid glue and I'm going to stack them up. So that way I don't have to worry about trying to cut out small pieces of foam squares to pop it up for dimension. So I die cut it out twice, but you could do more if you wanted to really pop that up a little bit more from that brick wall. And now I can start putting my card together. So with that background and the texture and the paste, it does kind of want to warp on me a little bit. And I want it to be nice and flat as I start to put the scene together. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to a side folding card base using tape runner. I'm going to pop up my borders here with the trees using some foam tape. And I'm also going to pop up the brick wall with foam tape. Now, the foam tape I'm using is a really thin thickness, so there's not a lot of dimension to it. Then for each of the cats, I do want those popped up as well. And those I kind of used a normal thickness for a foam square. I start with the one in the center and I just have the foam squares like more towards the top of their head. And that way they're going to be flush when they overlap with the brick wall. Then I'll also go ahead and add the garland to that brick wall. In hindsight, I kind of wish I would have added maybe like a snowy bank down towards the bottom. It feels a little empty, but it is a great, clean, and simple way to create this scene. I die cut out a small bow out of Tide Pool cardstock to tie in with the winter gear that the cats are wearing and then added that to the center of the garland. And then the thing, of course, that I always get hung up on is the sentiment. But I went back to the Cozy Cats stamp set and off screen, I stamped out these speech bubbles that I thought were really cute and I could get them in the direction that I wanted for each of the cats. So those, of course, I'm popping up with foam squares as well. I'll then come in with a white gel pen and just add some highlights to just really the garments. I didn't do any on the cat because they already had quite a bit going on with their stripes. I added some to my trees and then also that garland down there on the brick wall. And then that's going to finish off my card project. I love how this scene came out, and I was really happy how I was able to take Tammy's inspiration and kind of as a starting point, but tweak it and fill in or mix up the images to really make it my own. I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again real soon.